Hi, everyone. This is Dr. Juliet Singler, and welcome to week 13 of History of Rock and Roll. And we are talking about chapter 11 this week, Rock in the 80s. I want my MTV. MTV was a big influence in this area. Hey, just to give you an overview of what we're doing this week, first of all, you're going to be completing assignments N and O, and these are just artist profiles of different groups that might interest you from the 80s. What I want you to do there, folks, is just get a little more deeply into a particular artist that piques your interest, listen to their music, and write about their achievements and their influence on rock and roll. This week, you are also going to complete the week 13 quiz, and we are talking today about MTV and the classic rock artists of the 80s. MTV begins in 1981, and it really wasn't possible until cable TV came along. Of course, artists had made music videos before, all the way back to the 50s. Artists like Elvis were recording things like Jailhouse Rock as little mini movies, but no one had ever thought that it could be done on television for an entire channel's output. But when cable TV came along, basically anyone who had content could set up a channel and post that content. So there was some discussion about whether to go for a more corporate model where they would go with what they knew would pay, or a more artistic model. So the corporate model won out, at least at first. And proof of that is that Mick Jagger of the Rolling Stones was one of the earliest promoters. So by that time, he was like a household name, right? And was easily tagged to promote MTV. As time went on, a more artistic approach became possible, as well as broadening the content across racial barriers and gender barriers. At first, the first couple of years of MTV, it was 99% white artists. So Michael Jackson came along. He had left Motown in 1975 to become a solo artist. And at this point in time, he was at the peak of his fame. And basically, his record company, Arista Records, said, you know what? If you don't play Michael Jackson, we're going to pull all the rest of our artists. And they represented a lot of artists who were on MTV. So the corporations capitulated and let Michael Jackson on there, and the rest is history. Well, whatever else you may think of Michael Jackson, he was an incredible artist. He became known as the King of Pop for his great vocals, his tight band, and his slick dance moves. His personal charisma also was something that translated well to MTV. His Thriller album of 1982 contained 10 top 10 singles, including Billie Jean and Thriller. I don't know if you know these works, but if you can possibly listen to Billie Jean and Thriller, you'll do yourself a favor, because you'll see exactly what would have played on MTV at that time. Thriller is like a mini movie. It's 14 minutes long, and it's basically telling the story of a couple who goes to a horror film together, and he says, don't worry about that stuff. It's fun, it's exciting, but I'll protect you. And then they walk past a graveyard, and all hell breaks loose, literally. Billie Jean, though, is about a man about town who's accused of being the dad of a pregnancy, and he says, no, Billie Jean was not my lover, and that's not my baby. So this, if you start at about 1 minute 45 seconds in Billie Jean, you'll see his dance moves, and you'll hear his iconic little falsetto voice call that he makes that is so Michael Jackson. I think Madonna is borrowing from him a little bit in her version of Like a Virgin, in her song Like a Virgin from 1982. If Michael Jackson was the king of pop, you have to say that Madonna was the queen of pop. She was an incredible presence on stage, and still is. She's still rocking today. What I respect about her is that she made her brand into a multi-billion-dollar operation. So I think she was the first female celebrity to really take control of her business side of the venture and make a huge success of it. What she does is she plays with archetypes, like you can see with her name, Madonna. When you think of Madonna, you think of the Virgin Mary, right? and she is anything but virginal in her portrayal on stage. She plays with a lot of other archetypes like Beauty and the Beast. You'll see that Beauty and the Beast theme coming in on Like a Virgin. And she borrows a little bit of that Michael Jackson in this song in a section before, towards about 3/4 of the way in, before she gets to the chorus. Michael Jackson was hugely successful. So was Madonna. It was hard for anyone to break through such great talents as these two, but Prince managed to break through and become quite a contender for the title of King of Pop during his career. So Prince, he was very hardworking and talented, and his first breakthrough song was 1999, which he wrote in 1982. And by the way, it uses a chord progression for the synthesizer that's borrowed from the Mamas and Papas hit song from the 60s, Monday, Monday. I don't know if you know this song, but it goes da 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 da. And his synthesizer is playing that same chord progression in this song. 1999, basically the message of this song is enjoy the moment, be with the people that you love, because you never know when life is going to end. A similar message comes across in the song Purple Rain. And if you don't know that song, I suggest you listen to it. That song was actually the basis for a movie that Prince made, and he actually won an Oscar for the best song in a movie for Purple Rain. So you can see the version of the song that was part of the movie easily on sites like YouTube. And it's basically the story of a young man who's trying to find his voice as an artist. And that similar message that it has is that no matter how life goes, whether it's bad or good, the important thing is to be with the people that you love. That's the basic message of Purple Rain. Well, it wasn't all about pop music in the 80s. There were a lot of other things going on. We've talked before about punk music. It started in the 70s in the UK and the US, New York in particular, almost simultaneously. But as the years went on, there were artists that came up in the same clubs and were known as punk artists that wanted to do something different. And nobody knew what to call this, but in retrospect, we call it new wave music. So groups like The Police and U2 at first were marketed as punk, but really they have a different sound. So the song Roxanne has a reggae beat to it, folks. It's really neat. So a slower tempo, right, in these new wave songs, sweeter vocals, and sometimes you're going to hear electronic effects that you don't hear in punk rock. Punk rock, what are you thinking about for the sound? It sounds raucous, driving guitars, sometimes feedback coming from the guitars, but they didn't have any type of the synthesizer sounds or the electronic sounds that were so popular to experiment with those 70s progressive rock groups. But with new wave, sometimes they do dip into that still of knowledge, into that font of knowledge. So if you listen to the song Don't Stand So Close to Me, you're going to hear this synthesizer come in at the beginning of the song, and it sounds like it has an edge to it, like it's this undertone of anxiety maybe. I'm thinking that's what it must be, because the song is about a teacher whose student has a crush on him, and he doesn't want to get into any objectionable situation with that student, so he's saying, don't stand so close to me. And that little synthesizer sound at the beginning kind of sets up this tone of agitation. But again, the rhythm is slower, the vocals are sweeter than what you're used to hearing in punk rock. U2, now the Police were from the UK and the US. U2 is an Irish band, and I don't know if you know about them at all, but they have a reputation for standing up for social causes and for raising money for charity. So their song Pride, in the Name of Love, I know you know this chorus, in the name of love, once more in the name of love, has that little bit of social consciousness that we associate with the soul groups of the 60s. Basically, on each verse, they're describing someone who stood up for what was right, like Martin Luther King, for instance. And then they say in the chorus, it was done in the name of love. A great song. Now, groups like U2 and the Police, they're not doing anything so innovative or experimental with the music. It's just basically four chord songs, four chord songs. But what they do is they are doing neat things with the arrangement of the song. So interesting textures, sometimes a change of rhythm, sometimes just a different beat for a new section. And all of these things that they did to arrange their songs made it very appealing to the audiences. Now, blues didn't go away. You had some people who were singing blues that were inspired also by the soul singers of the 60s, who were really wonderful. George Michael, Hall & Oates. Michael Bolton is one of my favorites, fabulous voice. And when you hear them sing, when you hear them play their music, you can tell that they're direct descendants of that 60s blues sound. And then you had artists who were mainstream rockers like Bruce Springsteen and Tom Petty. We talked about these two guys last week, so I'm not going to go into much more detail about them. But I do want to mention that they weren't the only people who were getting this back to the basics mainstream rock sound that was so popular in the 50s. In fact, Tom Petty became a part of a group called the Traveling Wilburys, and basically this group is kind of an all-star band of rockers that's led by ex-Beatle George Harrison. I want you to listen to their song Handle with Care because it has a very easygoing Beatles sound to it. And you're going to see Roy Orbison, right? Roy Orbison is famous for the song Pretty Woman. Bob Dylan in there, and also the founder of Electric Light Orchestra, which was a 70s progressive rock band. Beautiful song, and great to see all of these great artists who don't need to make money, just coming together to write a song that's about being kind to one another. Dinosaurs adapt. All right, well, I don't want you to think that 70s progressive rock totally went away. It didn't. Groups like Yes, for instance, Emerson, Lake and Palmer, Pink Floyd, they continued to play to huge stadium venues, but some other groups changed. Genesis, for instance, spawned two great solo artists. Peter Gabriel, for one, left Genesis to become a solo artist, and his song Sledgehammer is great because you can see the kind of influence that psychedelic music had on the visuals on this particular music video that was made for MTV. So Sledgehammer, you're going to want to watch that because the visuals are really terrific. Also from Genesis was Phil Collins, who had a great career as a solo artist and is, I believe, still rocking today. Well, you have posted for this week an overview of MTV dance, rap, and alt rock of the 80s. It's called Up From the Underground, part of our Time Life series, and there are some great interviews and clips of these different artists we've been talking about, including some artists that we haven't talked so much about, but we'll get to next week. So remember, the video series wasn't made to go along with our book, but it's really good, so I think you'll enjoy hearing these artists talk about their music. All right, you have a great week, and I will see you next week. Bye now.